Shabbat shalom, everyone. Thank you, Schechter friends, who all came here to celebrate Oren's bar mitzvah, and I really do appreciate that Oren is sharing the bima with me in this way on your special day. It's really gives me a lot of great joy and pride to see you show off how much you've learned here at Schechter, here at Temple Manual and also at Schechter. It's really great. So friends, I also want to say words of thank you to all of you for inviting me, as you have about, once a year or so, I am invited to speak, and I'm always so grateful. And something that I've grown to really appreciate about when I'm up here speaking is that my rabbinic colleagues sit here just as they are now. I knew they would. I wrote this down. I knew this was going to happen. They sit here and they listen to me give me my speech, and they think to themselves, okay, how am I going to take what Ravid says and turn it into a blessing at the very end of services? You know that move they do? Very well, I might add. It's very impressive. Whatever it is I say, they're going to figure it out. They're going to boil it all down, and then they're going to say it in a very articulate and meaningful and blessing kind of way. But I made your lives easier this time, okay? I'm gonna tell you exactly what you're gonna say at the end of services right now. And that's going to be, that way you can relax for the rest of the time. You're welcome. Yes. Okay. So here is the message, the entire message. All right, you ready? Okay. The question always is, what's next? And the answer should always be, let's be together and make it count. Did you get that? Okay, but I'll say it again. The question always is, what's next? And the answer always should be, let's be together and make it count. What's next? That's a question that I am faced with every moment of every day, all the time. It starts first thing when I wake up in the morning. At least it used to. It's actually gotten a lot better. But my son, Avishai, who many of you know, he went to Hebrew school here for many years. He's around often. Avishai often in the morning will ask me and my wife, Yafa, what's for dinner? That's the first thing he'll say to me. What's for dinner? And how many decisions am I going to make between now and 12 hours from now when it's time to think about dinner? It's incalculable how many other things I have to worry about. So if you're already asking me what's for dinner, this is going to be a tough day. And that is something that we find. And I believe talking to my friends and my contemporaries, and I would venture to say probably all people ever, have found themselves living minute to minute, moment to moment, not even day by day. It's even shorter increments than that. How we just have our phones tell us what's next. I have an appointment, I have a meeting, I have to get my kids somewhere, I have something that I'd like to do, something that I have to do, something that's kind of in between. I have something for work, I have something for my family, I have something for my own health and my own wellness. There are always the next thing on our list. And that's something I've been thinking a lot about, and I've been thinking a lot about it especially when I thought at one moment in time that I was going to be giving this talk on Shmini Atzeret 2 days ago. And so it's on my mind, the holiday of Shmini Atzeret, which just passed. So even though normally we think about what's next, I'm going to go backwards in time a little bit. To 2 days ago, Shmini Atzeret, and the number 8, and the significance of the number 8, which actually has even more significance, I believe, today when we think about Parshat Bereshit. Because as those of us who paid attention to the Torah reading know, or anyone who knows the biblical story of creation knows, the world is said to have been created in 7 days. That God creates various things every single day, and then on the seventh day, God rests. But even in that resting, God creates something new. God creates rest. God creates Shabbat. But then the creating is over, and God's role in creation ends. So the question that we should ask ourselves, and it's a question students ask me all the time, is what did God do on the 8th day? We know what happened the first 7, but what does God do on the 8th day? Now, I said that I've been thinking of the number 8, Shmini, and there's a parsha that we read in the springtime, Parshat Shmini, which begins with the thought that on the 8th day, Bnei Israel finished the building of the Mishkan, and on the 8th day, they started to make sacrifices, bring offerings in the Mishkan. Now, it actually took a year for the Mishkan to be built. It didn't take 7 days for the Mishkan to be built. It took an entire year. But the Torah tells us that they start making their sacrifices on the 8th day as a way of signaling to us that the number 8 is the beginning of a new chapter. That 7 is the signal of creation, and 8 is the beginning of a new chapter. And that's actually something that for those of us who have ever had the experience of losing a loved one, know very well what that feels like. If you've ever sat Shiva, Shiva is the 7 days, and whether or not you actually sat for all 7 days, sat Shiva for all 7 days, because as I was saying with Parshat Shmini, it's not literally about 7 days, it's about the idea of a full completion, but then what's next? What's next on that 8th day? I'm sure that many of us can think back, those of us who have experienced profound loss, we sit in Shiva for however long we sit, but then eventually we have to emerge to that next moment in time. Ask ourselves, now what? What's next? And that is a profound moment when we see the next chapter of our lives totally uncertain. But it is the way we move forward in life, that we complete the chapter that we are a part of right now, and then we begin to think, what's next? And not for nothing, although obviously this is more cosmic than it is intentional, when we think about October 7th, the anniversary that just passed, the Yortzeit of October 7th, having been on Shmini Atzeret, we often think about the world as we knew it, October 6th and before. October 7th obviously has its own day and will forever have its place in our collective psyche. But then it's been October 8th and beyond. And we are still living in October 8th and beyond. We are still living in that kind of 8th day, the continuation of this new chapter, which really began on October 8th. And so when we think about all of these 8s as a way of making us ask the question, what's next? So I think of Shmini Atzeret. And God says, after the 7 days of Sukkot, what's next? Now let's see if you remember. What's next? Let's be together and make it count. Let's be together and make it count. That's what God says on the 8th day, on Shmini Atzeret. Let's be together. And that helps us when we are emerging from our mourning, when we are emerging from Shiva. We want to find people and seek them out and say Kaddish and find ourselves in a minyan, in a collection of people. When we're emerging from sadness, that's what we think about. I know that for myself, after October 7th, every chance that I had to go to a vigil or to hear a talk, I would take it, because the feeling of emptiness that I would find in these darkest moments in my life, I would say, I need to be with people, and it needs to matter, and it needs to count, and so I would seek out others, and I believe that a lot of us have done that as well. So when we are asking ourselves, what's next? The answer is, let's be together. Now, I had said earlier that my life is very busy, as I know all of yours certainly is as well. And when I feel busy, there are times when I don't want to be with anybody. There are times when I need to be alone. And I imagine myself on a deserted island, totally alone, without any care in the world, without any responsibilities, without anything that I need to do, without anybody bothering me. In fact, not even hunger pains would bother me, because I imagine myself on a desert island and I would just think of a food, and there it would be. It would appear right in front of me, and I would have everything that I need. That is what it would be like. I don't have to worry about whether or not I remembered to shave, which this week I didn't. I don't have to remember or worry about what it is that I'm wearing. In fact, I don't even have to wear anything. I'm totally alone. It is a great thought to imagine myself on a deserted island. But in this morning's Torah reading, we read about Adam Harishon and how he lived on a deserted island all by himself. And he had everything that he needed. And God looked at Adam Harishon by himself, on this deserted island of Gan Eden, and said, it's not good. That's not good. God had created all of the things of the world, all of the celestial things, the sun, the moon, the stars, the waters, the skies. God looked at all of it, and after each one would say, good, 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 good. Everything is so good. And then once God created the first human that was all alone, God looked at that human and said, that is not good. That is not the way that life is supposed to be. And so God created the second human. God created Chava. God created Eve. And you know, when God created Chava, God didn't just create a second person. God created the idea of togetherness. God created the idea of partnership. God created the idea of relationship. And so because of that, I actually believe that Chava, even maybe more than Adam, I believe that Chava might be the most consequential person to have existed in the Torah. Because without her, Adam would have been alone, and it would not have been good. And so when I said, you remember, I said, what's next? So I talked about what's next. I said, let's be together, and let's make it count. So Chava's existence in the story of creation is very obvious, and it counts in a big, big way. But what about us? How do we make sure that what we are doing matters? Because trust me, I'm very busy, but I'm not always sure it matters. I'm here, many of my students are here, and they know that I would never give busy work, right? Okay, mixed reviews. Okay, fine. Admittedly, I think any teacher knows, sometimes we give busy work, all right? But when we are hitting on all cylinders, when we are doing the best that we can as teachers, we are not giving busy work. We are trying to give work that matters. We are trying to make sure that what our students are doing has some intrinsic value to it. And so I see that in my own personal life as I make decisions. I have a pyramid of ways that I make decisions. The most basic level is it has to work with my otherwise busy schedule. The time has to work. The next level above it is that I have to be able to afford to do whatever it is that I'm doing. Because just like the way that I use my time matters, the way that I spend my money has to matter. I have a finite amount of time, I have a finite amount of money, and it has to fit with the way that I've set my life up with priorities. The next level above that is about childcare, making sure that I can get to dinner And whatever it is, that my kids will be accounted for and I won't go crazy. So those are the first three that I need to make sure that whatever it is that I'm doing checks those first three boxes. And when I think about a lot of the work that we do as Jewish professionals, as long as I've been a Jewish professional, 20 years as a Jewish professional, I've been trying as best as I can to think what's next in Jewish programming. What's next to engage the future generations? What's next? What is next to help make sure that I am engaging my contemporaries who they themselves are super busy? So we do this thing called low barrier programming. And as long as I've been a Jewish professional for the last 20 years, that has been the next big thing. For 20 years, it's been the next big thing is low barrier programming. And I actually think we've gotten pretty good at low barrier programming. We think about, does it work with people's schedule? Check. Is it free or at least cost effective? As best as we can? Check. Does it provide childcare? As best as we can? Check. But then there's the top of the pyramid. And it's that top of the pyramid that I think we all are working on and we all are striving toward, both in our personal lives and in our professional lives as we try to engage others. We have to make sure that what we're doing matters. We have to make sure that it counts. And trust me, just as much as my students know when the work that I give them matters or doesn't matter, sometimes in ourselves, we are making these decisions and we don't even realize it. And we say, you know what? I'm not going to do that because frankly, it doesn't matter whether or not I do. And we are too busy in our lives to spend it on things that don't matter, on things that are inconsequential about whether or not we show up. And so I sometimes wonder if people don't show up, as long as we checked off those first three boxes of time, money, and childcare, but if people aren't showing up, it's because they don't think it matters enough. I will say I want to give a shout out to Ilana from the Hebrew school, who runs the Hebrew school here. So Ilana asked me to sit on a committee to help think about the Hebrew school and its vision and its direction. And I was really honored. And the first thing I asked is, when is it going to be? And she told me, and it worked out okay in my schedule. Obviously, it was free. I didn't get paid, but that's okay, Net zero, it was fine. It worked out because it was after my kids go to bed, so it checked all of those boxes. But then I had to think to myself, is this really what I want to spend my time on? I'm not sure. My son Avishai is on his way out of Hebrew school. My other two kids go to Schechter. Is this something that matters whether or not I'm a part of it? But then Ilana said, we need you. We need your insight and we need your perspective, and it matters whether or not you come. And then all of a sudden, I made it a priority. I could have been spending my time doing anything. But instead, I said, I want to be busy. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to just sit on a deserted island. I don't want to just sit on my porch all day doing nothing, watching other people go by. I want to do something that matters. That has to be what's next for me. And so I've been thinking a lot about that. And so I hope and pray for all of us, no matter what role that we play in the communal life, no matter what it is that keeps us busy, I hope and pray for all of us that we believe that everything that keeps us busy matters, and that it involves being together with other people. Because if we can do that, then we will finally have answered the question, what's next? And we'll feel really good about it. Shabbat Shalom.